flowering meadows and pastures in the Swedish archipelagos, improved opportunities for the population there to make a living. These are just some of the aims of the new EU project known as GRACE.
Målet är att vi ska restaurera.
Our aim is to restore 23 Natura 2000 sites so that we can get our flowering meadows and pastures back. On the west coast of Sweden, this involves opening up the beautiful heathlands there. Here in Blekinge and Stockholm, it involves clearing the scrub vegetation round the valuable old oaks in these habitats.
Som finns i de här miljöerna.
In September 2010, the GRACE project team gathered for a preparatory meeting on the island of Vagner in the southern archipelago of Blekinge. The project will see the county administrative boards of Västra Götaland, Halland, Blekinge and Stockholm restore 990 hectares of overgrown habitats through clearing, burning and introducing grazing animals. The EU is covering half of the total cost of 8.5 million euros and the Swedish Environmental Protection Agencies providing 34%. These habitats came to be overgrown following the decline of dairy and forestry farming on the islands. As Bengt Larsson describes, milkboats used to travel around the archipelagos collecting fresh milk from the farms on the islands, which was then sold in the shops on the islands. But when it became a legal requirement to pasteurize milk at a dairy, that ceased to be profitable. Add to that the onset of electricity, Sweden building up an extensive electricity grid, and the coming of oil, which led to a drastic drop in the need for firewood. All that, says Bengt, led to these areas of land being abandoned a long time ago. The GRACE project can help by improving the opportunities for the coastal inhabitants to make a living from grazing animals, tourism and local produce. The charcoal burner on the island of Vagner is one example where, by processing woody material into barbecue charcoal, you can create a locally produced product.
We will be clearing, we'll be thinning. We'll continue to use the method where you produce charcoal from the timber instead of having to pay for expensive transport to the mainland. And we'll try to find grazing animals and pay a fee for the grazing out in the archipelago. There'll be quite a lot of fencing work involved as well.
The unique archipelago environment offers fantastic opportunities to experience nature and cultural history. To keep the landscape alive with the right conditions for species diversity, cultural history and accessibility calls for major and costly measures.
These are habitats that have existed across Europe for a long time. There used to be a lot of coastal heathland areas in Western Europe, like in Holland, but they've disappeared. It's parts of those habitats that we're restoring.
Restoration measures are also underway on the island and nature reserve of Kärringboda, south of Stockholm, where Mats Nordin from Stockholm's administrative board confirms they'll be continuing with this work. He says improved housing for the animals is essential if they're to maintain the animal stock that's already there, and especially to enable more to be brought in to continue with the restoration. Mats is pleased to say that they're building a new barn for this purpose, adding that it's usually very difficult to obtain funding for new animal housing. Even though it is, he says, a very sound investment since it's a way of securing grazing well into the future.
In order to conserve biodiversity, the EU has created a network of protected areas to prevent further loss of species and habitats. This has involved each EU member state identifying such sites in their respective countries. And there's more to it than just protecting the site. It needs to be managed as well in order to conserve its values. Many of these sites are extremely overgrown. That's why the EU is contributing half of the 8.5 million euros we're getting to restore these habitats. The moment I stepped ashore, the thought came to me of how beautiful this island must have been when the land was managed by those who lived here. You can see how beautiful it still is, but you're struck by how many of the habitats have become overgrown. I can just see the local people back then, working away with their scythes. And the landscape here is incredibly beautiful. Plenty of biodiversity, as well as such beautiful scenery.
Archipelago habitats in 23 Natura 2000 sites will have their flowering meadows and pastures restored. Natura 2000 is a network within the EU whose aim it is to prevent animals and plants from dying out in the protected areas. The task of the Life Plus Fund is to contribute towards improving conditions for the conservation of the biodiversity in these sites.